What if I told you there's a loop that never fails, never changes, and always wins in the end? Stop for a second and think about it. No matter what you do, no matter how much you try to change the outcome, it all comes back to the same point, the same scene, the same ending, as if reality were trapped in an invisible cycle, repeating everything again and again and again. Now tell me, have you ever experienced this? That strange feeling of déjà vu, as if that moment had already happened exactly like that, down to the smallest detail, as if time had a small bug, an imperceptible glitch, but enough to leave you with that uncomfortable feeling that something isn't right. What if it's not just your imagination? What if these small errors are actually signs of something much bigger? Something broken in time itself. Imagine waking up, going about your day normally, and then realizing that some things don't make sense. A clock that shows the same time for too long. A person repeating the exact same words, in the same tone, at the same moment. An object you swear was somewhere else. But now it's there, as if it never left. At first, you try to ignore it. Your mind searches for logical explanations, coincidence, distraction, tiredness. But the more you pay attention, the more these patterns begin to repeat themselves. And that's when things start to get really weird. Because it's not just repetition, it's precision. As if every detail were being reconstructed exactly the same. With small flaws, tiny glitches of reality escaping through the edges. Like a system trying to run something perfect, but failing little by little. And the scariest thing isn't the loop itself. It's the feeling that it's not happening by chance. What you're about to discover might surprise you, because this type of phenomenon goes far beyond theory or fiction. The idea of time loops, paradoxes, and broken realities already appears in various studies, stories, and even personal accounts that simply have no clear explanation. People who swear they've lived the same moment more than once, but with small differences, small changes that shouldn't exist. If time were truly linear, as we believe, but what if it isn't? What if time isn't a line, but a cycle that repeats itself until it reaches a specific result? What if every decision you think you're making has already been made before? That changes everything, because then we're not just talking about repetition, we're talking about control. About a system where the final result is already defined, and everything else is just an illusion of choice. Stay with me until the end. Because what begins as a simple feeling of déjà vu can transform into something much deeper, something that shakes your perception of reality, of time, and even of who you really are within all of this. Now imagine discovering that, no matter what you do, the ending never changes. That there's a hidden pattern behind everything, and that this pattern has already won every time someone has tried to escape. And perhaps, you are much closer to that than you imagine. So, perhaps, that's exactly why this feeling bothers you so much. Because deep down, some part of you recognizes that you've been here before. Not clearly, not as a common memory, but as an echo, a remnant of something that has already happened, even if you can't explain it. And the more you try to ignore it, the more these patterns seem to appear, as if they were trying to get your attention. Now I want to ask you a sincere question. Does what we're talking about here make sense to you? On some level, even a small one. Have you ever felt something similar? Because if so, it's really worth taking a second to write it in the comments. It could be an experience, a strange feeling, or even a question that never had an answer. Sometimes, what seems unique to you is exactly what other people are also experiencing, just in silence. And when you comment, you're not just sharing your perspective, you're helping to assemble a larger puzzle. Because this type of content grows precisely in this way, with people connecting experiences, noticing patterns, and questioning together. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people who are also trying to understand these flaws in reality, these possible glitches in time that nobody explains properly. If this type of reflection captivates you, makes you think differently, or even leaves you with that strange feeling we discussed, leaving a like is a simple way to show that you want to see more content like this. It seems small, but it literally tells the algorithm that this topic matters, that it's worth delivering to more people. And if you want to continue exploring these ideas, these paradoxes, these possible breaks in reality, subscribing to the channel is like guaranteeing you won't miss the next pieces of this puzzle. Because what we're starting here goes much deeper. And the more you observe, the harder it becomes to ignore. But I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because understanding what's really behind this loop completely changes how you perceive reality itself. We're not just talking about repetition, but about an invisible pattern that seems to guide decisions, influence paths, and somehow always lead to the same result. It's as if there's a hidden structure operating behind the scenes, a kind of predefined script, and you're just living within it, believing that every choice is entirely yours. Think about it. How many times have you made different decisions expecting different results, and yet ended up in the same place? That's not just a coincidence. There's a sense of cycle, of a journey that restarts, as if life were pushing you to learn something specific, repeat a behavior, or face a hidden truth that you haven't fully grasped yet. And that's where the concept of the loop begins to move from fiction to something much closer to our real experience. This type of pattern isn't just about time. It's about mindset, perception, and transformation. Because if the loop always wins, perhaps it's not because it's impossible to break, but because no one has yet understood how it truly works. Perhaps the key isn't in trying to escape, but in perceiving what is being repeated, which decisions seem different on the surface, but carry the same essence inside. And the more you observe, the more you begin to notice small revelations emerging. Situations that repeat themselves with different faces, choices that seem new but lead to the same impact, as if reality were testing you in different ways, until something finally changes for real. And when that perception begins to form, everything takes on a new meaning. Every detail, every strange sensation, every déjà vu ceases to be just an isolated moment and becomes part of something bigger. Comment below, does this make sense to me? Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because it's precisely in the first experience that everything begins to silently lose its meaning. It's not something explosive, it's not an obvious event. It's subtle, almost imperceptible. You wake up, follow your routine, make the same decisions as always. But at some point during the day, something doesn't fit. A strange feeling, as if that moment had already been lived before, not as a memory, but as a repetition. At first, the mind tries to protect you. It rationalizes, it says it's just tiredness, information overload, distraction. But as the details begin to align, the same conversation happening with the same words, the same look from someone at the same second, the same event unfolding as if trapped in an invisible script out begins to grow. And it's not just any doubt. It's almost a rupture in the way you perceive reality. And the most curious thing is that, at this stage, you still believe you're in control, that you can change something, that you can test small decisions and observe different results. But, little by little, comes the most uncomfortable realization of all. Even when you change, the result seems to find you again, as if there were a silent force adjusting everything behind the scenes, ensuring that the outcome remains intact. This is the first crack in the illusion of freedom, because when you notice this pattern, something inside you changes. Your mindset begins to question, your way of seeing choices gains new weight, and that feeling of absolute control begins to disappear. It's like starting a journey where each step reveals more questions than answers. And each small revelation carries a greater impact than it should. And perhaps the most unsettling thing isn't what's happening, but the fact that it may have started much longer ago than you imagine. You just never realized it. Comment below, I'm on this journey too. I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because after that initial realization occurs, what follows isn't just strange, it's impossible to ignore. The error begins to appear more clearly, almost as if reality were letting slip small flaws behind the scenes. And the more you observe, the more these flaws seem to take shape, like pieces of something larger trying to reveal itself. It's not just repetition now, it's distortion, a clock that runs slow and fast without logic, as if time were losing its consistency. A conversation you hear twice, seconds apart, like an out-of-place echo. A detail in the environment that changes without explanation, as if someone had rewritten that moment, but forgotten to adjust everything around it. These are not isolated events, they are signs. Small glitches of reality that begin to break the illusion of continuity. And what's most unsettling is the impact this has on your perception. Your mind goes into conflict, trying to maintain control, while everything around you begins to lose coherence. Your confidence in your own decisions begins to waver, because if reality can fail, then to what extent are your choices truly sound? This isn't just about what's outside, it's about what happens inside you too. A silent transformation, where logic gives way to doubt, and doubt paves the way for something much deeper. At this point in the journey, you're no longer just living, you're observing, questioning every detail, every pattern, every disguised repetition, as if trying to see beyond the surface, searching for a hidden truth that insists on not fully revealing itself. And the more you try to understand, the more you realize that these errors are not random. They follow their own logic, an invisible structure that seems to control the flow of everything. And perhaps the most disturbing thing is realizing that these glitches aren't happening to the world, but to the way you experience it. Comment below, I understand the signs is a go, but I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because there comes a point when understanding is no longer enough. When the patterns become clear, when the mistakes cease to be mere coincidence. The natural reaction is to try to escape, to change decisions, break routines, act completely differently. As if, by altering the path, you could finally change the destination. And at first, it seems to work. Small changes create a sense of control. You avoid a place, choose another path, respond differently, and for a few moments, everything seems new, as if the journey had truly deviated from that cycle. But then, almost silently, the pattern begins to reorganize itself. Different situations, leading to the same impact. New faces, saying the same things, alternative paths, ending at exactly the same point. It is at this moment that the attempt to escape begins to reveal something deeper. It's not just the path that's being controlled, it's the outcome. As if there were a force adjusting every detail behind the scenes, ensuring that, regardless of your decisions, the ending remains intact. And this completely changes how you see your choices. Because if they all lead to the same place, to what extent are they truly free? This perception generates a different kind of pressure. No longer the fear of the unknown, but the frustration of realizing that the known never changes. A feeling of being trapped in an invisible logic, where every attempt at transformation is absorbed by the system itself. And the more you try to break the cycle, the stronger it seems to become, as if it were already prepared for all your possibilities. And perhaps that's precisely where the most unsettling part of this journey lies. It's not about not being able to get out. It's about starting to suspect that the very desire to escape is already part of the loop. Comment below. It's impossible to F you are welcome. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because this is where everything changes irreversibly. After so many attempts, so many different decisions and altered paths, a realization emerges that can no longer be ignored. The loop isn't reacting to you, it's ahead of you. As if every choice you believe you're making in the present had already been considered before it even existed. This is the disturbing revelation. It's not just about repetition or control, it's about anticipation. As if reality itself were operating based on a predefined outcome, and everything you do was just a variation within a larger script. This completely breaks the idea of freedom, because no matter how much you change your mindset, your decisions, or your way of acting, the system already seems to know where it will all end. And when that truth starts to make sense, the impact is profound. Because you're no longer trying to escape something external. You begin to question your own role in it all. To what extent are your choices truly your own? Or are they part of a pattern that only looks different on the surface, but carries the same essence inside? It's like discovering the inner workings of something you always believed to be spontaneous. Every detail, every encounter, every path, everything starts to seem connected by an invisible logic, a structure that not only reacts, but guides. And the more you observe, the more you realize that there are no real flaws in this system, only small revelations that slip through, like clues to something much bigger happening behind the scenes. And perhaps the most unsettling thing is not the fact that the loop always wins, but rather that it never needed to try. Comment below. Nothing is by chance. I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it's precisely here that the concept ceases to be merely disturbing and becomes a true paradox. If the outcome is already defined, and the loop already knows what will happen, then a question arises that changes everything. Are you really choosing, or are you just following a path that has already been laid out? This is the point where logic begins to fail, because, at the same time that you feel you are in control, that you are making decisions based on your own will, there is this growing feeling that everything has already been foreseen, as if every thought, every reaction, every change of direction, were part of a larger structure, a kind of invisible script that adapts, but never truly changes. And this creates an internal conflict that's hard to ignore. Because if there's no real freedom, then what you call choice might just be an illusion constructed to keep the flow going. And more than that, perhaps the very act of questioning is already within the system. As if even your search for answers were a necessary step within this cycle. This is the true complexity of this paradox. There is no clear breaking point. There is no moment when you simply wake up and get out. Because everything you do, including trying to understand, seems to reinforce the very structure that keeps you inside it. It's like a game where all the options lead to the same ending. But you keep playing, believing there's a different way out. And the more you reflect on it, the more you realize that the loop doesn't need to hold you back. It just needs to convince you that you are free. Comment below. Should I really choose this? I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because once this paradox starts to make sense, what changes isn't just how you perceive reality, it's how you feel it. The emotional escalation happens silently, but intensely. That slight curiosity from the beginning gives way to constant restlessness, as if something inside you is trying to warn you all the time, because it's not easy to deal with the idea that your decisions may not be as free as they seem. This messes with your mindset, your confidence, and how you interpret each choice along your journey. Simple situations begin to take on weight, common thoughts begin to carry doubts, and, little by little, a difficult-to-explain feeling arises, that of being led. Even when everything indicates that you are in control, and the more you try to regain that sense of control, the more it slips away. This generates frustration, anxiety, even a certain inner discomfort, as if your perception were in conflict with something larger that you still can't fully see. It's like looking at a system from the inside, realizing it exists, but not being able to identify where it begins or ends. At this point, the experience ceases to be purely rational and becomes emotional. You begin to feel the real impact of these revelations. Doubt becomes a constant presence, curiosity becomes a need, and that initial feeling of déjà vu evolves into something much deeper, almost as if your own consciousness were trying to break through an invisible layer. And perhaps it is precisely this internal pressure that makes you continue searching for answers, even without knowing if they will actually change anything. Comment below. This stirred something with enough ago, but I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because it's precisely here that everything is reversed in a way you don't expect. Until now, the feeling was of being trapped in something external, a system, a loop, an invisible structure controlling the behind-the-scenes aspects of your journey. But what if this vision is incomplete? What if the error isn't just in reality, but in the way you see yourself within it? Because there comes a point when a possibility begins to emerge, almost like an unsettling whisper. What if you're not just someone trapped in the loop, but a fundamental part of it? This completely changes the perspective. It's no longer about trying to escape something that ensnares you, but about understanding the role you play within this machine. Think about it for a second. All the decisions, all the attempts at change, all the reactions. What if, somehow, they are exactly what keeps the loop going? As if your own pursuit of transformation is fueling the cycle, reinforcing the structure instead of breaking it. This creates a kind of revelation that isn't just external, it's internal. A hidden truth that shakes up how you interpret your own choices. And the more you observe, the more you realize that perhaps the loop doesn't exist, despite you, but because of you. As if your awareness, your doubts, your need to understand were essential pieces of this system. This doesn't lessen the weight of the situation, but it completely changes the kind of impact it has. Because now it's no longer about running away. It's about facing it. And perhaps, just perhaps, what you need to change isn't the path itself, but who you've become while traveling it. Comment below. I am part of the ago, but I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when everything starts to fall into place, there isn't a clear answer. There's a strange silence, a kind of understanding that doesn't resolve, but expands. As if you've come close to a hidden truth, but still can't see it completely. And perhaps that's the most disconcerting point of this whole journey. Because if the loop always wins, if all attempts are absorbed, if even your search for change can become part of the system itself, then what does it really mean to break free from it? Is there even a way out, or is the idea of escape just another layer within this structure? And this is where everything takes on a different impact. It's no longer about broken time, glitches, or repetition. It's about perception, about how you interpret what you experience, how you react to your decisions, how you understand the patterns that repeat themselves throughout your own history. Perhaps the loop isn't something you see, but something you recognize. And when that perception changes, even subtly, something begins to transform. Not necessarily the world around you, but the way you walk within it. As if for the first time, you begin to see behind the scenes while still living the scene. And that doesn't bring comfort, but it brings awareness. And awareness, in this type of situation, can be both the key and just another piece of the game itself. So the question remains there, without a definitive answer, echoing silently. If you were inside a loop, would you know? Comment below. I see Alhide ET. Perhaps if you've made it this far, it wasn't by chance. Some part of this idea resonated with you, even subtly, even if it's hard to explain. And that's exactly the kind of content we create here, reflections that go beyond the obvious, that make you see patterns, question decisions, and notice things that previously went unnoticed. If you want to continue exploring this type of perspective, subscribing to the channel is almost like taking the next step on this journey, not out of obligation, but because it keeps this exchange going, allowing more content like this to reach you and other people who are seeking to understand these same sensations. And if this video really stayed with you until the end, leave a simple comment. Right. I'm with you until the end. This creates a real connection, showing that you were part of this experience until the very last moment. And of course, if at any point you felt that click, that feeling that something made sense, leaving a like is a silent way of marking that, as if to say, this was worth it. Now, there's a video over here that complements all of this in a way that can expand this understanding even further. Click on it and continue reading with me there.